Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and rpgpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
Hey guys, welcome back to Creative Plan Podcast Network. This is Jim, and I've got a guest for the show, Ed from Shades of Vengeance.
Hi everybody. Hello Jim.
Hey Ed, so you've got this great game from Great Britain called Era the Chosen. It's just hit Kickstarter. It's already hit its goal with still, I'd say, about 20 days left to go. So, for those at home that don't know about Era the Chosen, a horror RPG, give us the skinny on it.
Okay, so first I should say it is called Era the Chosen, and that's really, really important for certain reasons. I have actually created a number of games, and the ones which are all in the same universe have Era on the front. So, surprising as that might sound, Era the Consortium, Era Liars, sci-fi, fantasy, superheroes, they're all actually in the same universe. I've not revealed how exactly they're linked yet, but there are clues in many of the books. So Era the Chosen is a horror role-playing game. And I have been trying to find a way to bring certain elements into the Era games. Now, I should also say that the Era games they all run on the same rule set, the Era D10 rule set, and the rule set is modular. So what happens is certain modules are inserted to make sure the game's flavor is correct for the setting that you're playing. So this is a horror setting. It does have one module that it shares with a couple of other games, but terror and trophies are unique rules to this. But if you wanted, for example, to bring in, say, a limited durability of your items or limited ammunition, things like that, you can actually bring them in from other games. So all of these games kind of network quite nicely in the rules sense. So Era the Chosen is based around the idea that those times when you have a crawling feeling, a sensation on the back of your neck, that feeling that you're being followed, that there are eyes in the dark, watching, waiting. And in that moment when you're feeling it, you know that there's a clawed hand reaching towards the back of your head. And then, as adults, we laugh and pass it off as imagination, or we whirl around and there's nothing there. And we go on with our lives. But what if there really was something there and you just couldn't see it? And that's what Era the Chosen is really about. So in Era the Chosen, our world is under siege. Creatures from another universe, which for the most part can't be seen by humans, and I'll come to that in a minute. A few can, but I'll explain that a little more shortly. They are attempting to escape their dying dark dimension into ours so that they can survive as their universe collapses. They can't quite get into our universe yet, but there's sort of a bridge dimension between the two of us. It's known as the Lost Lands, and humans and Anonassi, these creatures from this other universe, can both exist within it. And the idea behind all of this is that when you play this game, you're some of the few humans who can see them, the Chosen, who mostly belong to one of 5 families that live in Harbour City. The game follows sort of the story of the war. So when humans first realize it's kind of the Renaissance times, and humans begin to fight back, technology progresses over time, and you get to play in the Industrial Revolution kind of era. And then finally you get to play in the modern era. And depending on which era you play in, you can have a very, very different kind of experience. So, in the Renaissance era, it would probably be looked upon as demons or magic and monsters. Whereas in the Industrial Revolution era, people are beginning to understand that, maybe these are, creatures from another dimension, another universe. As they begin to understand that, electricity doesn't work within the Lost Lands. So what does that actually mean in terms of what kind of phenomenon it is? And then as time goes on, you're in the modern era, technology is advanced, you've got modern kind of weapons, and the Anonassi are all biological. So as time goes on, they also evolve, over a very, very concentrated period of time. And they start deploying new creatures, new weapons, which are sort of, they mostly focus on sort of biological style weapons, big monsters or swarms of insects that can eat flesh. Mm-hmm. Or will eat flesh, I should say. So depending on the era you choose, you can actually have a very, very different experience of the game. That's really what it's all about. It spans, this 100 years. Technology is accelerated for various reasons that are explained in the game world. And we actually make that transition from Renaissance to Industrial Revolution to modern very, very quickly relative to how well we obviously have in history. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's pretty much what it's all about.
I know a lot of our steampunk group are going to want to play the industrial era because that's going to be one that they bond with the most.
Yeah, and the thing about the industrial era is there's a lot of opportunity for the sort of mad science. There's a lot of chance to sort of go, okay, well, there's technology lying around in the Lost Lands. We can pick it up and we can maybe activate it, but we don't understand it. So, you then end up with the opportunity for that steampunk feel, if that's the way you want to go with your game. That technology is more advanced than it ought to be in the Victorian era, or maybe, a small group of people discover a way to do something that in theory they shouldn't be able to.
I could see a storyline now where Jack the Ripper was actually an Anonassi.
Anonassi? Oh, absolutely, yeah. That's definitely a possibility. And that's why no one could catch him. Because no one knew that he was actually an alien creature who wasn't in our universe for most of the time. Mm-hmm. I've had ideas along similar lines for a while of, imagine if you are in this universe and you're actually playing as a human who is not chosen.
Ooh.
So, you're investigating disappearances, say you're a gumshoe, mm-hmm. right? And you're investigating disappearances all over the place and what's going on because, people are disappearing or being slashed up and left on the streets. And then what happens when you find out, that one family within your city is constantly covering this up and trying to hide it? What's your reaction to this? Well, probably that family's guilty because Occam's razor says, the most obvious solution is more often than not the correct one. So yeah, it's got a lot of scope, a lot of opportunity to do many, many different things. And I think that's cool.
Yeah, I could definitely see a Sherlock Holmes who's not chosen being a foil for the GM against your players.
Oh yeah. Why are you covering up on this? I think I need to investigate you more closely.
Mm-hmm. How come you're there every time we find a body?
Yeah. It's very suspicious, isn't it?
That's the type of material every GM loves with their players.
Oh yeah. I'm actually a perpetual GM, so I can definitely assure you every GM loves to frustrate and annoy their players in those sense when they think they've got away with everything scot-free and then suddenly realise, oh yeah, by the way, there's someone out there watching you.
By the way, I got to give you compliments on the video for how to fill out the character sheet. That was a well done video.
Oh, thank you. I'm never 100% sure on that stuff, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. But I just kind of explain it the way I would explain it to a player. Mm-hmm. And I've sort of got used to that. I've sort of got used to doing that. So my hope is that, yeah, they come out okay, they come out informative and understandable.
Mm-hmm. And that makes life a lot easier when it comes to character sheets and seeing the breakdown of hey, here's how you play it from a nice first person, like if you're sitting at the gaming table, breakdown of here's how you do it. Super simple, super easy, follow these steps.
Yeah. And and you were talking about the production values, and I really can't take a lot of credit for that because Martin Popovsky, who's my video editor, he is an incredibly talented individual who works with me just because he likes doing gaming videos and he likes the stuff that I make. And the Anonassi at the start of the video was his idea. Mm-hmm. He went, okay, I want to do something really, really special for this. How about we do a 3D model of an Anonassi, and like the logo appears in his hand, and then it vanishes and his eyes flash up, and I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing.
I mean, that's as the wife said when I showed her that little intro. She's like, that's a smexy intro right there, because you get that cool, the music, the throbbing lights, the fingers come out, and Era, the Chosen, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you're never gonna forget that, are you?
Nope.
Like it's and he's just done a fantastic job, and it just sells what the game is right away. You know, it's okay, if you like this kind of thing, you will like this game. You know, and it's instant.
Yeah, it's a great pull-in.
That's his talent. And not only that, if you don't like the game, if you're not going to like the game, it's instant, right? You know immediately, okay, this game is probably not right for me.
Which,
you know?
That's good too. You're putting it out there right from the beginning. Exactly.
I mean, I don't want to waste anyone's time. If someone is not interested in my game, then I will, say, that's absolutely fine. I completely understand. I hope you find something else that you are interested in. Because at the end of the day, not every game is going to suit every person, right?
True. So I did notice that the timeline is June 2019 for the book. So that's a pretty quick timeline. So do you have a lot of the book completed already?
Yeah, actually, a lot of the book is completed, and if I'm totally honest, I would expect to beat June 2019 as of this stage.
Oh, that's awesome.
I should actually say, in real life, I'm a project manager for software development, so I've got a lot of experience in managing, sort of large groups of people, and I get to apply that experience to what is, okay, a smaller group of people, but, situations that definitely need just as much management. I am actually, at this stage, I've got all of the book written in first draft form. It needs a full-on edit from me, and then it just needs to go off to proofreading. All of the artwork is actually completed, so that's all done. That's easy, and we're really quite close to finishing off the book. So this is really for the proofreading, for the layout, for the printing, and to make sure that everything gets finished off to a nice high quality.
Very nice. And speaking of the artwork is gorgeous in the book.
Yeah, Mikhail has worked with me on another project, Era Survival. And I knew instantly that he was the one that I wanted to do the artwork for this, because he's got that kind of slightly hazy, fuzzy style that really conveys this sort of horror feel. That just I even look at it and I just feel like it's slightly creepy. And then when you bring the creatures in, and his method of doing the creatures really, really works very, very well. And it comes out looking very interesting and very, very striking.
Yeah, it's a beautiful painted style, like the Renaissance picture with the whole apocalyptic wasteland with the, I'm assuming, Japanese warrior in the foreground.
Yes, that's a member of the Nakamura clan. And actually, if you could see the rest of that image, there are actually a whole bunch of people below on the bottom left who are holding pikes and facing down this charging Anonassi force from the right. Yeah. That's sort of one of the major battles when they didn't have very much in the way of weapons.
That's when you do with what you got.
Indeed. And if you're protecting your home, you're gonna be there, and you're gonna be fighting as hard as you can.
Hey, you got to protect what's yours.
Yeah. Actually, now's a really great time for me to mention that we actually were doing audio stories. So Leo Kosh, who is a longtime friend of Shades of Vengeance, and actually he's the head of our sound wing. He's a very talented voice actor, and he's actually doing readings of stories, including voices for characters for Era the Chosen. There's already one up on the Kickstarter already, and I've actually just added the second in an update, and I'm going to add it to the Kickstarter before too much longer. So by the time anyone hears this, obviously this is time of recording. By the time anyone hears this, there'll be more up on the Kickstarter. And there's if you just look for if you do a Control F for audio stories, then you'll find it. He's been doing these stories, and we've got one which is actually coming up, which is from the perspective of a pikeman in that kind of battle.
Nice.
Which is a fascinating little exercise in how it feels to be in there. Now, again, this is a great time for me to mention Jennifer Martin and Darren Pierce and J.A. Cummings, who the four of us together wrote all of the stories in the book. But between us, we split it out between us. J.A. Cummings worked with me. I had the initial idea, and then she worked with me because she's got a little more expertise in the history than I do. So she worked with me to finish the creation of the kind of the setting to make sure that it felt right for those eras, and contributed a number of stories. And then Jennifer Martin, who worked with me on Era Survival, contributed a lot more of the stories. She's also worked with me on Era the Consortium and Era the Empowered. She and I work together very, very well, and we've worked on a number of projects together. And then finally, Darren Pierce. He's recently done some really awesome stuff. Most recently, he's been the lead writer on Judge Dredd in the Worlds of 2000 AD.
Oh, wow.
But he and I actually worked together on this as our first project working together. And then he actually went away and worked on Era the Chosen as well. He submitted some stories for that. Yeah, he's a good writer, and it's really, really nice to work with him. Jennifer really captures the horror feel very, very well, and she's particularly expert at that, although I wouldn't like to pigeonhole her. She's very good at other things as well. And with the help of J.A. Cummings, we were able to, really, really create something that draws you into this universe, this terrifying war with the Anonassi. From the moment when people realize that the reason people are being abducted is actually, they're not just going missing or being killed by humans, they're actually being taken by demons to another universe. All the way through to, okay, so we've almost managed to drive them out of the Lost Lands now, at the end of the modern era. What's next? How do we stop them coming back again without constant vigilance?
So yeah, I'm definitely interested in the connection now between, that and survival to see if maybe now we know what the plague is about.
Well, that's an interesting question. Maybe. It's definitely the case that Era Survival and Era the Chosen have two of the strongest indications of what the links are between the various universes.
Very nice.
There's a story which practically tells you the answer if you read Era Survival. You have to think a bit carefully, but there is a story that basically tells you the answer. There's an Easter egg in there. So go away and have a very careful read of Era Survival, or Leo and I are actually working on another project now that we've finished recording all of the Era of the Chosen stories, and I'm going to be releasing them during the Kickstarter. But he and I are actually working on an audiobook of Era Survival with every single story read by him, voices by him. I'm there directing it and helping him out and making sure that it sounds right. But it's absolutely fantastic. It's coming out really, really well.
That sounds like an awesome project.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's great fun, and it's great fun working with people who are so talented. And he and I are hoping to actually get that out onto Kickstarter not long after Era the Chosen's Kickstarter run ends. So I'm already looking forward to the next one.
Fantastic.
There's always more to do for me, and Era the Chosen now, as I said, it needs editing time, but not a lot else. So, I'm not actually writing any other games at the moment. Battlecruiser Alamo, which was my previous game, still hasn't been printed, but I've completed the editing and now it's in proofreading. Era the Empowered has been fully written and edited and proofread, and I'm just waiting on the last 10 pieces of artwork. Era the Chosen, obviously it's written, so I'm now spending some time editing it. And the time that I spend with Leo doing audio stuff is sort of separate to that. I'm working on some artwork and some writing and some playtests for another game that's upcoming. I've announced it already on our Facebook and on our blog, Era Lost Legend, which is based around it's a JRPG inspired game, particularly Final Fantasy, but JRPGs in general. And I'm also working on a card game that I'm planning to. Well, I have worked on a card game that I'm planning to release slightly later this year. I generally have a lot of plates spinning. We've got 3 comics, one of which is just about to launch on Kickstarter any day now. We're very, very close to being ready to launch it. So our comics division, SOV Comics, is just finishing off the Kickstarter and getting all the rest of the stuff finished so that we can go ahead and launch that. I've got 2 other comics. These are all based in the Era of the Empowered, the superhero universe. Which are underway with various different artists, and there's always a lot going on over here at Shades of Vengeance. We're always trying to do stuff.
You guys are being crazy prolific right now. That's awesome.
Well, I looked up one day and I actually went over to my bookshelf and counted, because I keep a copy of every book that I write. I've actually published over 50 books in the last 4 years.
Wow.
Which sort of, it was a bit of a shock to me, if I'm honest. I hadn't realized I'd done that many. 7 of those are games on their own, standalone games. Many of them are expansions. And then, of course, there are the card games and so on top of that. So, yeah, campaigns and expansions that give you new rules, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I keep making stuff. I keep having new ideas. I keep wanting to make new things. And, Era of the Chosen is obviously one of the more recent ones. But we've got a lot more projects on the go as well. So there's always going to be a lot to come for us for a while yet, I think.
That's fantastic. So speaking of rules, what is the actual game system that's used for Era?
So the Era D10 rule set relies on a multiple D10 dice pool with a varying threshold based on your, the difficulty of the action at the GM's discretion. So, for example, you might be punching someone. So you might roll a strength and a brawl stat, and the stats are based around dots that are filled in. So you pick up the number of dice equal to your dots filled in. So you have 3 strength and 4 brawl. You'll take 7 dice. You might remove the enemy's defense if they see you coming, and they're ready to dodge. So you might remove a defense number. Say 2 defense. So you'd end up rolling 5 dice, and you'd be looking for a 7 or better, for example, for an average action. And actually, there's a little bit more about why you might use different numbers in the actual Kickstarter and also on some of the how-to videos. But, if you were to punch them, you'd then roll a second round. So the successes from those 7s, you'd roll those for damage. And one of the things that I've been told is quite innovative about the system is that we have a damage threshold that you have to achieve and then an instant kill threshold for some weapons. So that means that, if you're shooting someone with a gun, your damage threshold might be a 4 and your kill threshold might be a 6, for example. So if you were to roll, 3 7 successes, you'd then roll those dice again. And if you roll any 6s, your target is dead.
Oh, wow.
If you roll a 4, any 4s, then, 4 or 5, then your target takes damage. But your target can then wear armor, which increases those numbers, right? So you can armor yourself to the degree where you can't actually be killed instantly by a weapon, or you can make it a lot less likely at the very least. But armor then has a knock-on effect. Obviously, you have to carry it. It has a dexterity penalty because it slows you down. There are various things that are negatives about armor.
That definitely sounds like a fun system, especially from the GM's point of view, because then when you make your creatures, since they're organic, you can tweak them a little.
Yeah, they can have natural armor or, thick skin that means that bullets don't necessarily kill them instantly. Or they could just be massive and, you can try and kill them, but in reality you're going to kill their leg or their arm before you actually reach killing them. So it gives you a lot of flexibility within that, that you could sort of have a multi-part creature that you then have to defeat piece by piece.
I could see that as an awesome, during the adventure, having to do the whole Shadows of Colossus aspect of climbing the creature and slowly taking it down.
Yeah, there's actually, in Era Silence, there's actually a genuine reference to Shadows of the Colossus. Because I was actually playing it around the time I was writing Era Silence. I was quite late to come across Shadows of the Colossus. I was just climbing around on this creature and I thought, wow, this would fit perfectly in Era Silence. Why don't I make a challenge where people have to actually work together to defeat a creature like this?
That just makes for fun stuff, especially when art inspires art.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of, I'm a big believer in not being worried about being inspired by other things. If I see something and I really, really like it, then, I'll be looking to try and get inspired off that. I think that's really important that's a possibility,
Yeah, definitely. That's, from a game master point of view, that's one of the best things about being a game master is you can be, hey, this doesn't fit our campaign, but this cool thing happened. I'm going to write it down, put it in my notebook, and save it for a rainy day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Find inspiration wherever you can.
Yeah.
So in the game we have the clans, and you did mention it. And of course, my favorite one is the Garcia. But can you give a quick brief overview of what the clans are?
Yeah, so the clans are a way of making your character unique from your party members. You don't have to be one from each clan. But the clans give you special abilities that aren't otherwise available to the other characters. So the Doused clan are the salvagers. I mentioned that there's technology strewn around the Lost Lands. There's actually an area where it's particularly sort of concentrated, known as the salvage fields. And the Doused were the first to discover the Lost Lands, and the first to realize that salvaging the technology from it could actually be A, the key to riches, and B, the key to, power.
Mm-hmm.
And they began as inventors, and sort of many of the other clans look down on them because really they're not fighters. They're technologists first and fighters second. They also see the Lost Lands as their own personal gold mine. They don't really think that anyone else has a right to it because they found it first. That's very much their attitude.
They planted the flag and it's theirs.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter that the Garcia or the Anonassi are there, they own this place and no one really has any right to say any different.
There's some role playability right there.
Oh yeah. The Garcia clan are, they're a lot more aggressive against the Anonassi. They don't like the Anonassi. They don't like the threat they pose. Mm-hmm. While the Doused want to eliminate the Anonassi for easier access to the salvage fields, the Garcia want to eliminate the Anonassi because they want to eliminate the Anonassi. They are there to take them out. And as a result, they saddle up. They get some of the most powerful weapons in the game. Rocket launchers, they get the Magnus 60, which has a, sort of a 3-round burst and the ability to fire explosive rounds. Yes. So each of these clans gives you not only you get one item from the clan that you get to choose, and then you also get some specialties that can build on whatever you've chosen.
That's cool.
So for example, the Magnus 60 or the rocket launcher would be a choice for the Garcia. And then depending on which you chose, you'd be able to choose the explosive rounds for the Magnus 60, for example. Mm-hmm. Now, the Rostov clan, these guys are the ones I mentioned earlier who don't want anyone to find out about the Anonassi. They understand that humanity would panic, and 99.9% of humanity can't even see the Anonassi. So what are you going to do? I mean, they're just going to panic, and it's uncontrollable. It's going to be impossible because the portals open all over the world, right? That you're not going to stop it just by, going, oh yeah, well, leave Harbor City. You can get away. So they believe that humanity should be protected from this dangerous knowledge. And they're the ones who cover up any evidence that there is in Ether, that's our dimension, of the Anonassi's existence. And also, they're tacticians. They're information experts. They monitor information. They look at situations and find the best tactics to deploy their people. Mm-hmm. And that's very much their attitude. So, they're actually natives who live in the Lost Lands. And one of the things the Rostovs are trying to do is teach the natives tactics and give them weapons so that they can fight the Anonassi themselves.
Makes perfect sense. Arm your allies to make sure the bad guys can't get closer.
Indeed. And the Rostov are more than willing to sacrifice the natives if that's what it takes. They tend to be fairly cold as people go.
They've got that tactician's disassociation of...
Exactly, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone is a pawn, and, you use it as you need to. Mm-hmm. And if that means they die, then I'm very sorry, but they die. It's for the good of everyone. And those three are the first three clans. So in the first era, you could only play as those three clans, because the Nakamura clan and the Chike clan are not present for various reasons I'll go into in a minute. So yeah, this is the Renaissance era, and as I said, the Doused discover it first. The Garcias discover it shortly afterwards, and the Rostovs then discover it within a fairly short period of time as well.
Nice.
And they all agree to work together, and they form the first Council of Chosen. Sort of, they're fighting and so on, and all this stuff happens. And a little later, in the Industrial Revolution era, the Nakamura clan arrive in Harbor City. Now, they've actually been fighting demons, in inverted commas, for many, many years. Just in another part of the world. And they choose to join the Chosen when they find out what's going on and, that they can actually have allies. Because, as I said, very, very few humans can actually see it, and it's often passed on by bloodline. So, for the Chosen to have another family to join them, mm-hmm. it is a big deal. And for the Nakamura to have allies in their fight, which they thought they were fighting alone until now, is also a big deal. And the Nakamura, I've got a lovely little quote for the Nakamura on the Kickstarter. It is never wrong to risk your life to save another. So in a lot of ways, they align with the Rostovs. They want to arm the native tribes. They want to teach them how to defend themselves. But, you know, they're more on the honorable, the self-sacrificing side. I am here to defend you, you know, and I will help you defend yourself, but I will be at the front of this battle. I will be making sure that you are as safe as I can make you.
You've got that great Paladin Bushido code going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's very much the Nakamura clan's attitude. And, they do use other weapons as well, but obviously they favor swords. And they actually have some ancient demon cleavers which have passed down their family for generations and have been killing Anonassi for a very long time.
You have that classic Hattori Hanzo sword made from one of their body parts, you know.
That's exactly the sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. Forged in Anonassi blood. That exactly that kind of thing.
Ooh, quenching it in the blood. I could just see it, a great little ancient blacksmith on the mountaintop doing his thing.
Oh yeah, and they've somehow managed to get this supply of Anonassi blood, into this trough so he can cool the blade in the blood of their enemies. So yeah, that's the Nakamura. They have various abilities that you might kind of expect from sort of that kind of trope. Mm-hmm. So they get major bonuses when they're defending other people, and when they're helping people out at the risk of their own lives. They've also got a little bit in terms of the kind of the ninja side, if you like. They've got some distractions, the ability to vanish and that kind of stuff. It is available to them. So all of these clans, all of these things are totally optional. You could be a Garcia and have neither a rocket launcher nor a Magnus 60. You don't have to take it. But it's an opportunity, as I said, to sort of make your character unique. Mm-hmm. And that brings me to the Chike. Now, the Chike are the very, very best example of scientific innovation during the Victorian era. Because the Chike were not chosen. They were not a chosen family. But there is actually an affliction which spreads across Harbour City for the entire period of time. It's called dark fever. But the chosen can't get it. The chosen are immune. And as you might have guessed, it's caused by the Anonassi. No one's 100% sure how, but in trying to cure the dark fever, a particular genius of the Chike clan discovered a way of curing it, and that made the Chike family chosen. Now, the Rostovs burned down his lab immediately. They tried to kill him. They don't want this happening. They don't want more people to know. And the idea that, because this man was obsessed with curing dark fever. Mm-hmm. So the idea that he might go out and give it to everyone in Harbour City, was something that drove them to a panic. But he escaped, he survived, and he actually went and hid in the Lost Lands and continued his work. And in the meantime, he had actually exposed all of the Chike clan to this cure. Mm-hmm. So the Chike became chosen.
Which he was just looking out for his people and science.
Indeed. And then he made an even greater discovery once being in the Lost Lands, because obviously he was also treated with it. He also became chosen. I should say, if you're not chosen and you enter the Lost Lands, you would see nothing. You'd think you'd gone blind and deaf.
Oh, that would suck.
You can't perceive it if you're not chosen. Mm-hmm. So if an Anonassi were to grab you and drag you back into the Lost Lands, you're just being capable of seeing it.
You're just in the glowing limbo of nothing.
Exactly.
Oh.
You'd be able to feel the ground beneath your feet, but nothing else. You'd feel like you'd gone blind and deaf.
Leading to the stories of alien abduction in the modern era.
Yeah, there we go. So this guy, Lucius Chike, he finished his work, and what he did is he combined Anonassi DNA with the Chike's DNA. So now, the members of the Chike clan will mutate when Anonassi get close into a half-human, half-Anonassi form.
Ah, so a protective, hybrid form.
Yeah, and there are 4 different forms that you can choose from for the Chike. So you can become sort of like the humanoid fallen who gain wings, have the ability to gain wings and they become stronger, they grow claws, they gain a mental strength because the fallen are telepathic.
Oh, okay.
So they gain a mental strength. You can gain the powers of a brute. They're the really, really big sort of hulking ones. So you'll grow stronger and tougher. You can gain the powers of a hellhound and become stealthy, and be able to conceal yourself better. Or you can even gain the powers, but only in the 3rd era. You can gain the powers of an ethereal. Now, ethereals are a mysterious kind of Anonassi. When a Chike becomes part ethereal, they actually partially phase, and bullets will pass through them. Like, you have a 50-50 chance the bullets just pass through you.
Oh, wow.
So you're completely untouchable. Well, through those certain pieces. But it moves across you like a cloud. It's not consistent. So, yeah, I mean, the Chike give you, if you choose the Chike clan, you can choose which form that you take. And those 4 forms are your possibilities. And as I say, you then get specialties that build on those. So the wings, for example, are a specialty that builds on the fallen form.
Okay.
So each of those 5 clans really gives you a sort of a unique opportunity within the game.
Yeah, each one adds a ton of background story and role play ability to that, especially the Chike. I mean, if you want to play the monstrous character, boom, there you go.
But, I mean, then you've got to consider what is other people's reaction to the Chike. I mean, you're out there killing Anonassi, and if the Chike are half Anonassi, what's going to happen when you kill all the Anonassi?
Exactly.
What happens then?
Yeah,
do you then have to turn on the person you've been working with?
And what's worse is what if an Anassazi's, sneaking around, nobody knows, you shapeshift in the middle of a crowded area. That could cause a panic.
Oh, goodness, yes.
That could be, more fun.
I mean, they don't survive very well in our world, so it doesn't happen very often. But yeah, I mean, that would be a hell of a mess for the Rostov to clear up.
Mm-hmm. And, when it comes to clearing up information, sometimes making it disappear is easier to make the person disappear than the future legwork.
Yeah. Also, of course, the Chike ability serves a really useful indicator when you're in the Lost Lands and you're about to be sneak attacked.
Mm-hmm. That would be a great defense measure of you've got them and they can say,
okay, we're about to be under attack.
Yeah, I sense danger.
My spider senses are going off.
So one thing I noticed for your players is you have the great thing, and it's something I love for all RPGs that have them, the player's guides as one of the options. Yes.
So I find that there are some things the GM doesn't want to show the player, and the player's guide for Era of the Chosen does not include information on the Anonassi.
Keeping that secret.
You don't know what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn what they can do. You can gradually find that out, but you don't know what they can do. And what I do for the players' guides is I include all of the rules, so that the players and the GM, they're looking at exactly the same words, so it's word for word the same. I include character creation in full, again for the same reason. I include equipment as much as possible. Usually a few bits and pieces that are very, very rare get lost out of the player's guide, because you still got to make the pages balance properly. And then I include just a briefing on the story, the kind of thing you might know if you were new to the world. If you were new to being a chosen, what might you know? Okay, well, that's all you get. Right? So in theory, you could run the game off the player's guide, right? You could expand the setting yourself. You could look through the stuff and you could go, okay, well, that inspires me to do this. So I'm going to go off and do that. And you could absolutely run the game with the player's guide. Obviously, the core rulebook contains a lot more information. It contains all the stuff about the various clans, about the Anonassi factions, because they're in factions as well. They aren't all just one thing.
So
they all
that's
have,
good to know.
They have multiple different factions with different goals. And it's not divided by biology as well. So you might run into one Anonassi of one type who is, fervently, I would almost say, I would almost say religious. They believe that humanity and our universe are a scourge and should not be allowed to exist, and that Anonassi should not try and enter it. And they'll be absolutely merciless in their approach to humanity. And you might meet another one who's more used to taking humans prisoner because they're part of a different faction of Anonassi who, take humans prisoner, force them to work, and then eat them when they've gained enough muscle. So there are lots of different options, around the way that things can behave, around the backstory. Obviously, the history of the over 100 years of war is not entirely contained within the player's guide, but what is contained is a 1-page summary to get you up to speed with what it's like in that era.
That's very cool. So that way it gives you...
For each one of the three, you see.
So that gives you that nice good, hey guys, here's what the story arc is, and go crazy.
Exactly.
So one thing I was going to say is on the Era Horror bundle, you've got the Karma cards. What's the deal with Karma?
Okay, so Karma is a mechanic from Era Survival specifically. I combine the two because I think the rules for those two games combine very, very well, very readily. And the Karma cards are a feature of Era Survival. Karma is not alignment.
Mm-hmm. It's a great...
But it's Era Survival's version of it. So, alignment, obviously, everyone's pretty familiar with kind of the D&D, lawful to chaotic and good to evil. Mm-hmm. Karma only comes in good and bad, but rather than defining how your character behaves towards others and how it goes into a situation, karma is based on how you come out of the situation, what the actual effect of your actions is. So, for example, that means that you could have bad karma, but have never intended to do anything bad. There's actually a main character in Era Survival's story who, he was always planning to be what's called a wise one, people who understand the technology from the past. It's post-apocalyptic, so a lot of the knowledge has been lost. But he was training to be a wise one. And he was fixing a helicopter. There are only 3 in existence. 2 of them work and 1 of them's in pieces. And he was working on fixing the third with another large team. And he was asked to do something. And in order to try to impress his mentor, he rushed. Mm-hmm. And he welded too close to the fuel tank.
Ooh.
He survived the explosion, but in effect, he sentenced thousands of people to death because the helicopter was destroyed. So he had massive evil karma, despite never meaning any of it. Mm-hmm. So it means that you have this extra nuance. You can be a good character and have evil karma. You can be a good character and have good karma, or an evil character and have evil karma. You can be an evil character and have good karma because, you look at a building and there are people inside and you figure, ha ha ha, I'll collapse the building on them and they'll all die. And then I can loot their bodies. Ha ha. Evil laugh. Mm-hmm. So you collapse the building, and you kind of dig your way in, and you find that 17 people have survived. And as you approach, one of them reaches out towards you to embrace you and says, "You saved our lives. When the building collapsed, you crushed all of the zombies who were going to kill us. We were going to be infected. We were going to lose. And you saved our lives by crushing them. You gain good karma because you saved lives." Mm-hmm. So it gives the GM an opportunity to, I wouldn't exactly say mess with players, but to consider the future rather than just today. And what is actually the result of your actions rather than, oh yeah, well, I got rich. That's cool. Mm-hmm. Now the karma cards, as you get more karma in either direction, you get more karma cards. And there is actually also a reward for neutral as well. So there's good, evil, and obviously neutral in the middle. So you actually do have a concrete reward for being neutral that's a different kind of thing. So in good karma cards, good things happen to good people. Evil karma cards, bad things happen to bad people, but you can usually find an advantage out of it in the end. And that's the way that karma cards work.
Which, it is a great system, because in survival, I've used the Walking Dead characters to describe how the karma cards work, for that one of the intention is not result, and you can make some great bad guys that are actually really well loved and respected by the people.
Absolutely. Because, yeah, I mean, they might be dictatorial
Mm-hmm.
or terrifying, but what they're actually doing is keeping hundreds of people safe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they'd have good karma.
Yeah, and it makes for great character arcs, too.
Yeah, it does. And that's what it's really all about, isn't it? It's all about making the characters have an arc, have a story, have a reason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then, something bad happens. Well, everybody hates you because something bad happened and you were in charge, More players need to realize it's okay for your story arc to work that way, And then you can have an awesome redemption story. Or you can...
Yeah, I'm a massive believer in fumbles are some of the most fun things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the story becomes unexpected, It's where it takes a turn that you never could have seen coming.
And that's the one thing every GM loves, is when the story takes a left turn and you had no clue where it was going.
Absolutely. It's the thing that makes it fun to do, because otherwise you just sat there, you know exactly what's going on all the time, you know exactly what's planned. It gets boring,
Exactly. After all, Game Masters are there to play too.
Yeah. I mean, as a perpetual game master, I fully agree with that statement. They're there to have fun just as much as the players are. It should be possible, and it is possible, to have just as much fun.
And when we did the playtest of the Quick Start rules for Survival, the first time we did it, one of the characters completely changed what they wanted their player to be because, I've got karma. And they basically changed their character on the fly. They're like, it was going to be this, but she became this character. And it's like, you owned it. You made that part your character. You played your character correctly. You felt in your heart of hearts, your character has to go this direction. And that's magic.
Yeah, and I try to make sure that all mechanics guide you. They don't force you.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, a lot of it's down to interpretation. But all of the mechanics I try to make are really designed to guide you. And in the combat mechanics I described earlier, that's something where I think it really comes through, that fact. Because, you narrate your own combat style, right? I was actually doing this earlier in the Lost Legend game I was playing, because one of the player characters decided to spar with an NPC. And, she repeatedly beat him. I just got incredibly lucky on my dice rolls, and I was sat there she was just beating him up. So I was narrating, okay, well, she kicks at your knee, elbows you in the back, and then pushes you face down onto the floor. You take 3 pain damage. Okay, I kip up and I come back to try and fight again. Okay, well, and then we roll again. Okay, and this time, she slides out of the way of your punch in a way you wouldn't have believed possible, brings her knee into your gut, and then just pushes you over forwards onto the floor again. And you take 2 pain damage this time, and so on.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, that's another thing that reinforces the awesome rules, is the fact that players come up with a combination of the skill and the characteristic, which that can lead for so much fun role-playing when it comes to doing things.
Yeah, I mean, there's no fixed relationship between the attribute and the skill.
Mm-hmm.
So in this rule set, if charisma and brawl is the thing that makes sense because, you're trying to seduce the girl by looking good when you're sparring, then that might be charisma and brawl because you're caring about how you look rather than, what you're doing.
Enter cheesy smile, and, you could almost see one of those movie-style fights where the guy's looking at the girl and smiling during the fight and doing the whole panache angle, which I love when players use panache.
Yeah, I agree entirely. It was... and things turned out very well from that thing. And, we got to sit there and we got to narrate what our characters were doing. And, it is assumed in the Era D10 rule set that anyone who fights to the best of their ability,
mm-hmm.
right? So if you fire a shot, you can say, okay, well, I'm aiming to sort of just one of my allies is being eaten by a worm in Era the Chosen. I'm going to fire so the bullet passes just over her, like inches over her face, and then hits the worm without damaging her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's going to be tricky, but yeah, okay, go ahead and take the shot. Bang. Okay, that happens. So yeah, you sort of get to have that moment of, it just passed over her and she was kind of looking up and going, the bullet. And before she knows what's happened, the worm's off her feet, stopped eating
mm-hmm.
her.
And she's now covered in goo.
Well, probably, yes. There is that.
That sounds like it's going to be one of those games that people are going to get a ton of great playability out of it.
I hope so. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of success with Era the Consortium, Era Survival, Era the Empowered. I think there's endless scope. You know, there's a lot of different things you can do within the game, and that's really one of the things that I try to do when I create games is give people the opportunity to play anything they want to do within this subset of things. And here's a universe that allows that. And Era of the Chosen is very much the case again. You know, you can do the mystical horror, you can do the Doctor Who style horror where, you know, it's horror because you don't understand what's going on. And when you do understand what's going on, it's just kind of disgusting. and it's not anywhere near as scary anymore, if you know what I mean.
Where it has that campy almost feel of danger is real, but it's not as scary as we thought. It's not Lovecraftian. It's just a different type of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did mention the Quick Start guide for Survival. Do you have Quick Starts for the other Era books?
Yes. Virtually all of our books have quick start guides. There is one for Era of the Chosen, which is linked on the Kickstarter by a nice big image. Yeah, so there are quick start guides for most of our books. They're all pay what you want on DriveThruRPG, and most of them, I believe, are available on our store. I would have to actually double check if all of them are, but I think they are. So yeah, if you wanna have a look at the games, that's well worth a look. It's also well worth having a look at our YouTube channel because, as I mentioned before, you know, I ran an Era of the Chosen game. And you know, that was recorded. It's just gone up on our YouTube channel, so it's available there. It's going to be on the Kickstarter shortly. And I also run a regular game of Era the Consortium. Every Monday we release a sort of 20-minute, 30-minute episode. And you know, we're sort of running a genuine campaign with no end in sight. You know, we're just running an ongoing campaign. And I think that's a great showcase of how the game works. And it's Era of the Chosen, but they all run on the same rule set. So, you know, it's a great indicator of what it takes to actually get involved in the game. Because one of our players is really a newbie to role-playing. One of our players is very, very experienced, and the two others are somewhere in the middle. So, you know, you get the opportunity to see, okay, well, I'm very, very experienced. Okay, well, I'd probably experience it like this person. Or, you know, I'm relatively new to role-playing. I think I'd probably have an approach like this. And you can begin to understand what it's actually like to play the game rather than just seeing the rules or going, yeah, I understand that.
And that's why I love real plays, is because you actually get to see from the player's point of view of these are the real questions that come up at the game table. These are the moments that happen, you know. So that way you get to feel, okay, at my table, this may or may not come up. And then, you know, and let's be honest, from a game master point of view, you might watch the show, get some great inspiration for your own group. Or you may look at something and go, I was doing it slightly different. Sort of like when we do convention games. It's great seeing how different GMs run different types of
Yeah, I mean, that is always absolutely fascinating to me. I go to a lot of conventions, and actually, a lot of the conventions I go to, we actually only run 40-minute games, because I do a lot of non-role-playing conventions. And what you do is you just put together a small scenario that has a little bit of combat, a little bit of moral choice in role-playing, and then kind of a consequence at the end. Sort of a player choice, if you like. The way that people approach this, and the way that different people approach it, it's not even based on how experienced they are as role-players. It's just based on the people that you see playing this. And when you run the same session 50 times, with 50 different groups of people, it's absolutely fascinating to see the different things that people come up with.
Definitely. I mean, because literally it's 50 different results of each game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No two games are exactly alike.
That's one of the best parts of game mastering, is seeing how different wheels turn.
Yeah. You know, nothing pleases me more than when someone says, "Can I do this?" Because I basically never say no to that question. Like, that is very, very rare for me to have to say no to anything. And that's one of the things I like about the Era D10 rule set as well. It literally can handle anything. You might have a very, very low chance of success. It might be even almost impossible. But, you know, you can. I never have to say no. And I never want to say no.
Yeah, because that hurts players' feelings when you have to say no to something. Unless it's some crazy off-the-wall, hey, you have a 1 in 100 shot, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Yeah, you can always say that. You know, this is one of the things that makes me like dice pool systems.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're rolling a single dice system, and I'm going to pick on D&D here because I can. But if you're rolling, a dice, a single dice, and it's a D20, you have a 1 in 20 chance.
Mm-hmm.
If you're rolling 3 dice, and you have to roll a 10 on any dice, that's not a 1 in 20 chance anymore. In fact, it's kind of a lot more complicated, and the player is not just going to register, oh, well, I have a 1 in 20 chance, then I won't try.
I've got 3 chances to succeed.
I have 3 chances to get a 10. Am I going to manage that? And if I get a 10, then I get to roll another dice. So, I might even get 2 successes.
Mm-hmm.
So, am I going to risk that? So, it makes it a little more computationally complicated. It makes it it makes it a normal distribution instead of a flat distribution.
Mm-hmm.
A bell curve, if you like.
Yeah.
And that means that the better you are at something, the more likely you are to succeed.
Mm-hmm. Which is how it should be.
Which is how it should be.
Yeah.
But it does it without needing lots and lots of arithmetic and adding modifiers onto your single dice roll and so on. Because to me, I find that arithmetic breaks my suspension of disbelief.
Exactly.
If I'm sat there and expecting to add stuff up, I'm kind of going,
Plus 2 to this, plus 2 to that, plus 2 to this. Yeah, I completely understand you on that one. It's action requires the energy to keep going, and as soon as you stop to start, metagaming to the adding up of the arithmetic, it just pulls you out of that moment.
I agree, and that's one of my major gripes with multiple non-multiple systems.
Mm-hmm.
And equally, I chose D10s. I chose D10s because most people can think, okay, well, that's a really hard thing to do, and I understand the percentages. Mm-hmm. So, on any dice you have 70% chance. Okay, I get that. It's harder. Okay, I'll make it a 90 or 80% chance. It gives you that granularity that you wouldn't get with, for example, D6s.
Exactly.
I find Era D10 is perfectly playable with D6s if you want to, but it doesn't have the same granularity. If you say, oh, you've got to get a 5 or better, and then you've got to get a 6 or better, and it's not different enough to me.
Mm-hmm.
It
doesn't have that nice arc curve, and for a GM, from the GM's point of view, it gives you a great way of balancing the difficulties.
Yeah, because everyone pretty much understands. Oh well, okay, I have a 30% chance of succeeding on any dice. Mm-hmm. I'm rolling 5 dice, so I'm probably going to get like 3 or 4. And the GM can think that very easily and quickly and go, oh yeah, okay, so it's a 7+ you've got to get.
Mm-hmm. And it gives you that nice breakdown of, is it a 7, an 8, a 9, or a 10, The
variety between them, yeah.
Exactly. Which, that makes life so much easier when the GM can on the fly throw things out there. And, because we all know, as GMs, that sometimes you have to come up with stuff completely on the fly.
You really do. And my Lost Legend group are expert at that. They really are fairly expert at that. They blockade ran a shipment today, and literally they came up with this idea that the brawler guy would stand on the roof, right? So when they hit the cars that were being the blockade, he'd go flying off the roof and into someone at 60 miles an hour. And you're sat there going, you realise you'll probably die. I don't care, it's cool. Okay then.
The rule of cool wins all.
It does, actually, and for me that's very much the case at my table. If someone comes up with a cool idea that's very cinematic, very visual, I'll give them every opportunity to survive it. And he had the opportunity up front to sort of analyse the situation and make sure that he pushed off in the right way, make sure he landed on something soft, well, someone soft to be more specific. And all of these kinds of things that kind of in action movie physics mean that he could survive it.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm a huge fan of that. Like in D&D Journey of the 5th Edition, one of our players, a monk, jumped down an 800-foot window, tried to grab the flying bad guy, missed, was falling to her doom, and she was freaking out going, I lost my character. I'm like, no, think about it. You're a monk. It's Dungeons and Dragons. You have your fighting ladle, which is her weapon, her ladle of doom. You have a backpack full of equipment. What equipment do you have on you? And then we started looking at her character sheet, and I'm like, now think about it. You have rope. You have a ladle. you have 800 feet of time to fall and figure out what you're going to do.
And you're a monk, so you think quickly anyway. You react
exactly.
quickly.
You had that Jackie Chan moment of, what am I going to do? And she ended up tying her rope to her ladle on her way down through the ladle as a grappling hook, and then did this cool ninja-style run down this spike coming out of the ground with her ladle slowing her down. And she rolled a natural 20.
Mm.
So the dice even wanted her to survive. But it's one of those of, it lets players think outside the box, which is great.
Yeah, and that's what we were saying a few minutes ago. It's always nice to see the players thinking outside the box. It's one of the things that makes the GM feel like the game's a success. When people go, yeah, I'm going to do this thing, and you had no idea I was thinking about this.
I love when players do that. That's all I have to say as a GM is that's those beautiful moments when you walk out of the game store or wherever you're playing and you say, no shit, there we were, and this happened.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few stories that I've got from some weird games. One that springs to mind in one of my era. It's called High Fantasy at the moment. We are going to name it something better. I just haven't got round to naming it yet. Names are hard. Names
are very hard.
Names are really, really difficult. I struggle with this in GMing as well because I can never come up with names for NPCs. I have an entire personality for them. I have a background. No time flat. Names? Not so much.
You got to make sure the name matches the description, but you don't want to be too on the nose with it because then all of a sudden they'll immediately jump to conclusions.
But this Locustkin, which is one of the races in Era High Fantasy, he was very enthusiastic. It was his first time being an adventurer, and he was very, very enthusiastic. And he sort of came to a well, deep well, and he wanted to look down it. So he turned to the orc. Who was with him. Orcs are not necessarily bad in Era High Fantasy. It's not quite as clear cut as it often is in D&D. Oh no, it's an orc. We better kill it. Mm-hmm. This orc was on their side, and he said to the orc, "Oh, I want to look down the well. I want to look down the well." So the orc grabbed him by the ankles and dangled him. And then he went, oh, it's too dark down here. What am I going to do? He was an elemental mage, so he cast a fireball downwards so he could see what was at the bottom of the well. and then he went, oh, that was cool. That was great. I mean, this well's empty, but can we go to the next one? And the orc kind of half dragged him out of the well, smacked his head on the side until his head passed through the side of the well, near the top, but so the above ground bit. Sort of smacked his head until it went through. He's like, oh, I'm a bit dazed. Walked over and then dangled him in the next well.
Because it worked before, right?
Well, he enjoyed it. The character was going, yeah, that's great. But yeah, I mean, that's the last thing I expected the characters to do. I also remember a time that a particular individual decided to look at searing light because he was curious what it looked like.
Ooh, that's a bad plan.
It was a bad plan. He was blinded for a while, stumbled around, and actually, ironically, fell down a well. It was a different well, and in a different situation. But yeah, no. He just got curious. He got curious what searing light looks like.
Because you never know. There could have been like an angel in the middle of it or something. Who knew? Until you look, you don't know.
Exactly.
There's a reason during the eclipse they tell people, don't look at the sun. If they have to tell you not to do it, somebody's done it.
Of course they have. Of course they have.
So Ed, thank you for bringing Shades of Vengeance and Heir of the Chosen on the podcast and so we can share it with everybody. And definitely, folks, keep an eye on the Kickstarter as well as checking out the other games that they've got there because I'm really wanting to know now what the connection between survival and, the Chosen is going to be. You've got me with that fishhook.
Excellent. I'm a universe builder in essence, and I love to kind of make all of these universes work together in sort of a sane and explainable way. And I'd just like to say thank you very much, Jim, for having me along. It's been fantastic chatting with you. If any listeners are interested, I'm hoping you'll be able to put a few links in your show notes. And
Definitely.
I'll give you a few links to things. If you're interested in Era of the Chosen, there's obviously the Kickstarter. There's also a unique Facebook group for Era of the Chosen. Many of our games are available on DriveThruRPG. So if you're a fan of DriveThruRPG, you can go and get our games from there. You can also get our games from our store. You can't get the hardbacks from DriveThruRPG or the paperbacks, the physical versions from DriveThruRPG, because I don't use them for printing. I actually do printing separately. So you can only get the physical stuff through our store. Yeah, the digital stuff you can get off DriveThruRPG. So do go ahead and check those places out if you're interested. And if you're interested in talking to us, I mean, reach out to us. Talk to us on Facebook, on Twitter, talk to us on Kickstarter. We're around, and I'm around in particular. I answer the vast majority of the questions that get asked. So yeah, post, tell us what you think, ask any questions. We're here to help. We're here to talk about stuff. And as you may have noticed from this particular podcast, I love to talk. I love to talk about our games. I love to talk about universes. I love to talk about being creative. So again, Jim, thank you very much for having us.
Oh, Ed, you're very welcome, and you're always welcome back anytime. And keep making the fantastic books. That's all I'm going to say. Definitely get the hardbound version of these books, because the artwork in Survival is amazing. And PDFs are nice, but if you can get the dead tree, get the dead tree. All right, guys. Thank you for listening.
On the battlefield, I'm a warrior, ready to kill or be killed. I've defeated orcs from the north, sent Kandorian demon spawns back to the depths, and drank with Cimmerian heroes. But when I get back from a hard day of disemboweling my enemies, I enjoy nothing more than to open my castle doors and find a dungeon crate as my reward for blood well spilled. Designed for role players and tabletop gamers, Dungeon Crate is a monthly subscription box service with a treasure hoard of loot you can use on or off the battlefield. Miniatures, dice, tokens, coins, maps, modules, terrain pieces, handcrafted items, RPG jewelry, and more are yours for only a few gold per month. You even get a digital crate along with a physical one as an added bonus. So what say you? Are you ready for postal glory? Oh boy. DungeonCrate.com. Let the adventure begin.
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.
Presumably you would like me to say something so you can get your volume set properly. Benedict Cumberbatch saw an overloaded luggage rack.
That's a great quote. I'll have to quote you on that.
Actually, I'm quoting Benedict Cumberbatch because he does actually sometimes use that to warm up. As indeed does my voice actor pal Leo, who works with me on a lot of the audio stuff. It's got a good array of vowels and consonants in it, that get you going,
Definitely. It hits the B's, the P's, and the T's,
Exactly.
Hey, that's why we play games, to have fun.
Absolutely. And if you're not having fun, then what's the point? But, and then finding the theme for the game is something really, really important to me. So